also want to thank the NASSCOM team for giving us an opportunity to host this session around mobile and wearable, IoT, and whatever else we're going to talk about in our offices. You know, so the topic I was given was Future of Wearables. I actually don't even wear a watch, so I don't really know what's going to happen to smartwatches. No, I'm just kidding. But what I thought I'd do is I'll talk a little bit about Future of Wearables, but since mobile is also a part of what you're focusing on today, I thought maybe I'll start with mobile. And I know the session, I was just sitting through the session that you all had, where you talked about mobile, so I thought I'd start with mobile and then move to a few thoughts on wearables. And then I'm going to try to keep this short and then open it up for questions, any kind of questions that you might have. You know, what's interesting is if you look at mobile, there are about 3 billion internet users today in the world. By 2017, 2018, we have about 6 billion. That's pretty much just about everybody on Earth would have a mobile device. And it's looking reasonably clear now that most of them will actually have what we call today a smartphone, right, which is actually the first wearable device. You just kind of carried it as opposed to it's the first carryable device and not maybe the wearable device. So I think you're looking, number one, at very large scale around the world, and I think we know what that is. I was in China last week, just before Diwali. I spent 10 days in China, as you know, I was in China. China has 600 million connected smartphone users already. In India, as all of you know, we are actually already the world's largest mobile internet in terms of percentage of connected users accessing only through a mobile device. About 230 million users. This data is a couple of months old. Every 3-4 months, this sort of new data that research firms release. But 230 million internet users in India. 130 million of them only access the internet through a mobile device. Of the remaining 100 million, 50 million are like all of us. We access through, most of you probably access through a desktop or a notebook, as well as through a mobile device. So we're really looking at of the 230 million users, about 180 million that access through a smartphone. Already over 100 million connected smartphone users in India. So of the 180 million, let's say, over 100 million actually are connected to the internet through a smartphone. And so we were already looking at pretty large numbers. Every month, India is adding about 5 million new users in India. 5 million new users in India. So one of the things I'm hearing lately about is how amazing companies are launching, getting to 50,000 users in a month. Not interesting anymore, right? Because you're adding 5 million new users a month. So my view is, 5 million is the new old 50,000. Right? You've got to get to a couple of million users to really be able to do that, because the reality is we're adding about 5 million users a month. Now, the 5 million users, they're 100% mobile. And almost all of them now are smartphones. Now we've got smartphones that are on 2G smartphones. I'm sure those of you that follow the smartphone landscape, India is the first country to where OEMs are launching 2G smartphones. They work on 2G. Why? Because actually, although we're adding 5 million new users a month, 80% of those new apps actually come from 2G networks. So those of you that are building apps, especially for India, that's actually very, very important, because most of the users will access your apps actually on 2G networks. So 5 million a month, all on mobile. Today, 80% of them are 2G networks, not very good. But the reality is, it's growing like crazy. Our view is that by 2017, India will get to about 500 million users, 500 million users. And that's a large number of users, right? And we also think that, probably starting middle to end of next year, we'll start seeing the first real emergence of broadband infrastructure in terms of some fiber to the home, LTE, when LTE starts scaling, you'll see some of the 3G networks getting upgraded, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's fair to say, we're almost at the end of 2014, so 2015, 16, 17, if you take a sort of a 3-year horizon, you're looking at 500 million Indians on the internet. At this point, the only thing that could stop that is a nuclear war, because the consumer demand is so strong. And I do genuinely mean that. People ask me kind of, what could stop that? A nuclear war would stop that, which would wipe out half the country, and so we actually would only have 500-600 million people, and then it's hard to imagine 100% penetration. And it's also probably realistic to assume that we would go from essentially the world's largest narrowband nation, which is what we are today. It's kind of sad, the world's largest narrowband nation. We're actually still building the narrowband nation, because if 80% of the new ads are coming on 2G networks, we're building it out. I think we'll see that shift. It's hard for me to say today how many of the 500 million will be on broadband, 3G or more, or fiber or more. But it's probably reasonable to assume that at least 200 million of them will be on 3G. Today about 30-35 million are on 3G, right? Imagine that, 180 million smartphone connected, internet mobile connected users, only 35-40 million are on 3G. Massive 2G, right? So, and the growth is all coming from 2G. So every month we're adding more 2G users. Right? But I do think that sometime end of next year, that will begin to change. Combination of reasons we can get into if you're interested in that, both on the fixed side as well as on the wireless side. And so, essentially we're looking at 500 million users, let's say 200 million of them on broadband networks. That's actually pretty exciting. I think so far a lot of how many of you are actually coming from companies that build apps of one sort or the other? What do the rest of you do? Anybody from hardware? Okay, great. Okay. Anybody who's actually got wearable hardware? Okay. Should have asked that. So that's a pretty large market, right? So where we are today, if you look at mobile and you take sort of a global view, is already you've got a very large sort of global mobile market, right? Which is why I think Microsoft and companies like that are able to build very interesting businesses by largely leveraging sort of consumers in the developed markets where payments are sort of sorted and they have high disposable income and so on and so forth. But my view is that over the next several years, we will start seeing very large markets. I mean, large for us, by the way, $1 billion here is kind of large. Right? I was in China, and China's online gaming market is $14 billion, growing at 50%. So I said, that's like mega for us, because our online gaming market is like 100 million, right? So maybe, but we will start seeing, I think, markets that will approach and exceed $1 billion, just in terms of things like gaming and mobile advertising and so on and so forth, based on the domestic market, right? So I think that's actually pretty interesting. And I think where we are today is in many ways the infrastructure is being laid, right? So the way I think about infrastructure is once you get phones in the hands of 500 million smartphones in the hands of 500 million Indians, and once you actually give them some level of affordable broadband, let's just call that 3G that kind of works sometimes, which is what we have today, 3G that works sometimes. That should be the latest commercial. It works sometimes. Most of the time, maybe it doesn't work. But that is really the infrastructure, right? And then the users will have some base level of things that they'll do. They'll do messaging, they'll do social. Those who are privileged to actually have broadband, they'll watch videos, and so on and so forth. They'll do a bit of search, this and that. But I think the opportunity in India, this comes to the future of mobile in India, is I think the opportunity really is, especially for Indian companies and startups, is how do you build relevant, locally relevant, exciting, interesting, meaningful applications for these users, right? It amazes me that, I don't know whether we shared this data with you this morning, but if you look at the top 100 apps on Google Play globally, one of them is from India. And it's a ripoff of Brazilian game. I shall not name the game. 1 out of 100, right? If you look at the top 1,000 apps on Google Play, less than 10%, less than 100, no, actually less than 15, not 10%, 1%. Less than 10 of them are from India, and none of them are origin, meaning none of them are something that you look at and say, wow, this is amazing, right? That's not to say, by the way, that we don't have companies that are doing good stuff, but we don't have, we still don't have that kind of, sort of vibrancy, if you will. So that's both an opportunity and a bit of a challenge, right? But now, this is in a world where, despite having the 100 million, 180 million mobile internet users, payments is still difficult. Like for instance, in Play, they don't have carrier billing, so it's very difficult. Mobile advertising is just beginning to take off. I don't know how many of you know this, but if you've got a mobile app, and especially a gaming app, interspatial is like $1.50, $2 CPMs, right? This is very good CPMs, by the way, because GEC television in India, guess what the CPMs are? $2. So if you've got a mobile app that's got scale in India, and you're doing interspatial apps, in India, from Indian users, you're already at GEC CPM levels. Pretty remarkable. And we've gone from like having no CPM to G. Now, by the way, GEC CPMs in India are the lowest in the world because we have 700 television channels. So that's a different issue that the market has, but it's pretty amazing, right? Because we used to always talk about how do we monetize digital, and then it became how do we monetize mobile, and boom, you're going to get a new ad format, and you can do that. So, and I do think payments will also get sorted. So, for instance, by the way, I found out in China that Chinese don't use credit cards. This is actually not good news for all the credit card companies in India, right? Because they were all hoping that Indians would start using credit cards. Actually, Indians don't know how to use credit cards. So, 400-500 million Chinese pay online, games for e-commerce, etc. Actually, almost don't know how to use credit cards. It's all kinds of new payment instruments that are in their bank accounts. So I actually think now after my China trip, that's my new idea, which I think that's sort of what's going to happen. I don't know exactly what the product is. I don't know exactly how it's going to work. But there are 3 or 4 amazing platforms. It's just easier to use. It's just easier to use. You just scan a product and boom, pays. Because I just got a note that said, this would be a good use case for my watch. There you go. That's one idea. Time's up. It starts beeping and the watch starts going off. Yeah, let's take 1 or 2 questions. Yeah.
So I think why I heard a lot about the wearables and the fact that it can be used for a lot of interesting modifications. So I come from Yoti, which is a fintech company. So I'm very interested in understanding what would be the transactions and the payments in the wearables. Is there a future there, or it's all going to be still on the app and not on the wearables?
Look, I don't know. I mean, I suppose that could be interesting, right? I mean, again, you just have to put yourself in the shoes of a consumer, right? Today, I have to take I always say, how many steps? Today I have to take my wallet out. Then I take one step. I take my wallet out, I take my credit card out, I give it to them. Then they go away, then they come back, then they ask me for the PIN, which I don't have. So I take my wallet out again, I look my PIN, I know what it is, right? And then I enter my PIN. So that's like, 6 steps. Then you take the app, you can open up the app. It's probably 3 or 4 steps, right? So can you now take it down to 1 step? Yeah, maybe. Right, so just start with the consumer journey and think through, do you radically change the consumer journey? I think if you radically change the consumer journey, then it could happen. It's definitely easier than paying with the phone, right? Because paying with the phone, how many steps? Maybe, I don't know whether it is easier. And you could do authentication off a watch anyway because it's authenticating off your phone, right? Yeah. Yeah.
There are 2 trains of thoughts in the industry currently with respect to wearables. One is, wearable as a companion to a smartphone. And the other thought is, essentially the smartphone and wearable combining into, a device where a wearable also has communication capabilities, is able to talk to the internet directly and, you don't really need the phone for the communication part.
Yeah.
What do you think, what's your view on, which way, what may be more, acceptable going forward?
So I think I don't know. I mean, look, you all would know better than I do, but my view is, look, if you assume there are 2.5, 3 billion people that have smartphones, 6 billion will, I think it's easier to leverage the processing capacity and everything else that your phone has, right? So this one, whatever this other device is, can be cheaper, lighter, more dedicated. Right? So I think in the near term, this makes sense. Now, what I don't know in the long term is, it depends on what you guys do. Can you give me a chip for free? Give me a chip for free, and if Airtel reduces rates a lot,
it may not be free, but
you know what I mean, right? So, if I have to replicate this on another device. See, the thing is, what's very clear is the wearables are going to do a lot less than this, for sure, and it should, because I don't want my watch to do everything, because I don't know how to do the things I do with this, right? So it should therefore be significantly cheaper. It has to be, I think. For mass scale, right? And therefore, but at the same time, it does need some of the things this offers. So I think, so in the near term, I think it'll be paired, and then longer term, where can it go? I don't know. I actually think it's very interesting if you can get, for instance, like when I was saying, right? I think 500-600 million people, Indians, will use smartphones, but I don't see in the next 6, 7 years, 1 billion Indians using smartphones. But I can see 1 billion Indians using some sort of wearable. It has to be very cheap and it should do something really amazing that they pay like 10 rupees a month on a subscription basis and it costs like 200 rupees. I mean, we know, right? 30 rupees a month, by the way. Magic price in India, 30 rupees a month, you will do amazing things. We know that from seeds. Let me take one question and then, yeah.
My question was more about cross-platforming and genders from that perspective. See, the context is, you mentioned about messaging being the killer app.
Yeah.
You know, I have gone through from a time, I think, when many of us have, when we started off with mobile phones and they're like 15 rupees a phone call. But the SMSs used to be free. That was the beginning, right? The telecom companies obviously hadn't realized the potential of the SMSs.
Yeah.
And then the moment they started charging for SMSs, messaging became popular.
Yeah.
And BlackBerry was what was popular at that time. And then when BlackBerry stopped allowing cross-platforming and iPhones were coming up, that's what really made WhatsApp successful.
Yeah.
Because they could. So, you know, while there are different aspects, what I see is that there is a continuity of how users are actually utilizing devices. They're using it for the same thing, to talk to each other, to probably connect and get some stuff, right? So how, and again, now that we talk to wearables, I mean, if you see Android Wear, which is connected to Android as your platform, but if you see Pebble, which is cross-platform, works across Apple and, you know, selling way more than Moto 360 right now. It's cheaper a second, obviously, but if you look at the platform, Moto 360 is all color, slides, touchscreen, very sexy, but Pebble is very old world, black and white, e-paper, but stays live for 15 days. They're very different value props. What I'm saying is, how much, you know, and part of that is also that question that you asked, that only one Indian app amongst the top 100 in the Play Store. How much do we appreciate cross-platforming as an opportunity to grow and innovate? And how much of us are really stuck into our own environments and try to define within that?
Yeah, so I think, look, well, first of all, cross-platform is going to be very, very important because in many ways, you know, if we have, let's say, 6 billion smartphone users, you know, there will also be, you know, let's say a couple of billion of them will also have all kinds of these other devices, right? And my view is, look, depending on what you're trying to do, it's important to reach as many of those people that are relevant. At any given time, theoretically assume that you can do. So I agree with cross-platform. But you know, I think the whole, by the way, anything that you're paying for that becomes free is a killer app. Right? You know that, WhatsApp. I'm messaging, right? You pay, it's free, it's killer. And if a lot of people use and pay for it, and you make it free, then it's going to be really big. I mean, simple sort of rules, right? Now with the watch, I want to know what the time is. That's like what I use it for, right? Now, what can I do? The notifications are interesting, etc. Can I see doing messaging? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.